Joining us now, former U.S. Attorney and MSNBC legal analyst Joyce Vance, District Attorney for New York's Westchester County, Mimi Rocah. They are co-authors of a new opinion piece in Slate, calling out the lack of international outrage over the reports of sexual violence committed in the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. A lot of it is seen on video and documented in video of women who were raped, killed while they were being raped, young girls who were raped. I mean, the evidence is clear, and yet, Mimi, I'll start with you. There has not been a focus on this as a war crime or on this enough, according to many who believe women's rights are not even being considered here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe Mika, for talking about this important topic. And I guess the thing I would say, given the clip you played, is why we don't have to be balanced in our outrage, which I think is the phrase that was used. We should not be balanced in our outrage, not against the Palestinians, by the way. She said Palestinians. It's against Hamas. Hamas did this on October 7th, and we have to be outraged because, first of all, the girls who had their pelvic bones broken because they were raped so much, whose legs were broken, who were shot while people were still raping them, they deserve us to be outraged, as any woman of any background would. Second, because there are still young women hostages, and we have every reason to believe something horrible may be happening to them. And so we have to be outraged. The whole world has to be outraged and demand their release now, just as we've done for other girls who were taken captive in other parts of the world. And finally, Mika, and this is the most nuanced point, but I hope women everywhere understand it, it's because this hurts women everywhere when we say, tell us, don't believe what your eyes are seeing. When we let people with an agenda like Hamas, men, dictate when we believe rape happened. No, we have evidence here. I'm a prosecutor. Joyce is a prosecutor. We look at the video. We listen to the witness testimony. We hear the accounts of people who saw it. And we can't let other people tell us when to believe rape happened. It happened, and we have to support all women everywhere.
Joyce Vance, your take, and what do you think needs to be done?
So I think, Mika, that Mimi makes the most important point here, and it gives us the starting point going forward. This is, as y'all have been discussing this morning, a hopelessly complicated crisis. The question is, what's the path forward? And perhaps a small piece of that starts with an acknowledgement of our common humanity. It's not complicated to condemn rape. It shouldn't be difficult. And often in the heat of the moment, it's difficult for people to reconcile their emotions. Now the United Nations hearings give us an opportunity to evaluate the evidence. And that's what Mimi and I do as prosecutors. We're used to discussing the evidence, even in these horrific sexual crimes, in a very straightforward manner. This will be painful and difficult for many people to listen to, but the evidence, the eyewitness accounts, the accounts of medics and first responders absolutely confirms that these rapes took place, that they were torture rapes. Now it's incumbent upon women in the international community and here domestically to take a moment to reflect and to evaluate on what the evidence says. And then we can speak with one voice and say, this is wrong. It doesn't matter if it happens in war. It certainly shouldn't make a difference that the victims are Jews and Israelis. We can condemn this and acknowledge our shared humanity and begin to move forward to deal with the other implications of this crisis.
Mimi, during World War II, military code law was that American soldiers who raped a woman could be executed. And that actually relaxed a bit just because men of color were convicted unfairly, and Eisenhower intervened in a case. And then by the time we got to Germany, it wasn't necessarily that an American soldier would get convicted, and George Patton was infuriated. And that was the ethos of the U.S. military during that war. If any American soldier raped a woman, they should be executed. how did we get from that to today, where you have American leaders trying to equivocate here?
I don't totally know the answer to that, but my educated guess or opinion is that it's about victim blaming. And that's why I say this is so dangerous to all women, because for many complicated reasons, as Joyce says, and I'm not here as an expert on foreign relations or the war itself or anything. I'm here on this one issue about women and sexual assault and believing victims and believing the evidence that we see in front of our eyes. But I also am very familiar with victim blaming. I mean, we know it in this country from her skirt was too short, she drank too much. And we've all fought, I think, quite hard for decades to get away from that. And this feels very reminiscent of that. The girls at the music festival have nothing to do with the bombing that's happening now. But yet, when you pivot from, yes, rape is bad, but don't bomb Gaza, you're inherently blaming these victims for that. And I think that's what's going on here with some people. I mean, this is a generalization. And it's wrong and it's dangerous for all of us, for all women everywhere.
Joyce, but what you and Mimi are concerned about in part is the international community's failure to condemn the rapes. Like, what more do we need to know about that? What they've, who we're talking about? What have they failed to do?
Right. So there was silence for a lengthy period of time. There were even some folks who suggested, as Mimi's been discussing, that the accounts of these rapes weren't credible. I think today there's a little bit of a restart. The United Nations was extremely slow to acknowledge and condemn these rapes. Now we appear to be on that path. These are war crimes, and they can be prosecuted as such. It's also a possibility, quite frankly, that the Justice Department could engage on the topic of American women who were kidnapped and who were raped, and there could be prosecutions. Israeli law on conspiracy is a little bit different than our law in the United States. It's more demanding and restrictive in terms of the need to specifically show an agreement that encompassed an agreement that Israeli women would be raped as part of this operation. There is evidence that indicates that there was preparation and advanced planning, including linguistic help, people being told how to speak Israeli to tell women to pull down their pants. There's been some testimony from people who were involved on the Hamas side that there was perhaps a religious waiver, a fatwa, that permitted them to violate traditional Muslim dictates against rape. All of this deserves examination and scrutiny, and really it demands it, because as Mimi says, if women aren't safe in Israel, then women aren't safe anywhere. If we can use justifications to blame individual victims, young women who were asleep in a kibbutz, and here we're talking in some cases about teenage girls and younger. If we can blame women who were attending a concert for the policies of a nation that they may or may not have supported and use that to justify rape, women are not safe anywhere. So we need to begin to speak out more strongly than we have up until this point.
Former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance and District Attorney for New York's Westchester County, Mimi Rocah, thank you both very, very much for coming on this morning. And still ahead,